It's been over 2 years since Kagurabachi dropped its first chapter, and I still see comments saying, wait, is Kagurabachi actually good? I thought it was just a meme. And for a while towards the beginning, it was. Good thing too, because, it got people reading and helped this brand new series get the traction it needed to avoid Shonen Jump's indomitable axe. As the series went on though, something unexpected happened. This manga that people jokingly said would be the new face of shonen and a cheap Demon Slayer knockoff was actually pretty damn good. I think a huge portion of people who picked up the series thanks to these memes actually ended up enjoying it a lot more than they thought they would. Admittedly though, enjoying was more or less the extent of it. At least that was the case for the first 2 arcs. They had good writing, incredible art, a dope power system, cool characters, the whole shebang. It was just good. However, shortly after the Rakuzaichi Auction arc, the entire series suddenly pivoted away from linear and relatively self-contained story arcs and threw us straight into the deep end. In fact, I think I can show you the exact page Kagurabachi went from a really cool potential series to... Wait, what did Hirohiko just say? From there on, Kagurabachi experienced a steep incline in not just quality of visual storytelling, but in how its readers actually perceived and consumed it, with viral memes popping up left and right, YouTube chapter reviews gaining decent traction, and some jaw-dropping fan projects such as Aizobachi. Sure, a weekly self-contained arc is fun, but an overarching story with constant mystery, insane theory crafting potential, and art like no other, that's what separates a good shonen manga from a great one. It was safe to say that at this point in time, Hokuzono had hit a flow state and gained a true mastery of the weekly shonen format. But what I really want to emphasize is that even though, the memes gave Kagurabachi a very strong head start, it had nothing to do with the overall quality of the series itself. A series clowned to high heaven before even releasing had somehow ended up becoming a genuine masterpiece of fiction by nothing other than sheer coincidence. You can tell just by reading and rereading Kagurabachi that Hokuzono knew exactly what he was doing and where the story was going from the moment he put pen to paper. It reminds me a lot of stories like Bleach or Attack on Titan in that sense. Sure enough, by the time Kagurabachi had reached the climax of part 1, it had already written itself into the history books alongside the very series we often compare it to. And so after a full reread of the series to confirm it was every bit as good as I thought, I decided enough time had passed. It was time to put the I thought Kagurabachi was just a meme mentality to rest for good by looking back on part 1 and appreciating just how far Kagurabachi has come and how far it still has left to go. For a series with such a passionate and creative community though, I felt like, it was a waste to limit this video to my thoughts alone, which is why I reached out to some of your favorite Kagurabachi YouTubers from Across The Bachi-Verse and gave them each a part 1 arc to review. Yes, I know, it's all very wholesome and cool, but it's still my video, so obviously, I'm gonna get the ball rolling by exploring the very arc that put Kagurabachi on the map for good. So as always, like the video, subscribe to everyone's channel, and let's dive right into Chihiro Rokuhira versus Genichi Sojo. The first arc of Kagurabachi is actually my least favourite of all the arcs so far, not because it's bad, but because everything to come after this just kept on upping the stakes by a ridiculous margin, to the point where Sojo now looks like nothing more than a mere annoyance. Even at the time of the arc's completion, when I first picked up the series, it was really damn cool, but not something that gave me any long-term investment in the story itself. The more I reread this arc though, the more I start to appreciate just how much heavy lifting it's done for the series as a whole. As of writing this video, we are at the chapter 121 mark, which is over 100 chapters later, and yet the more the story progresses, the more everything links back to what Hokuzono had set up right at the start. The most basic example I can think of is how Hokuzono piqued every reader's interest with a single solitary panel showcasing the Seitei War battlefield in chapter 6. At the time, you saw this panel and were like, oh, that's cool, I want to see more of that. But now when you go back and read it, you say, hold up. are those crow feathers? Looking back at that panel and seeing enchanted blade abilities that aren't revealed until the third arc of the series is so cool. But the effect that one panel has will likely keep on climbing higher because there are probably many more abilities yet to be revealed hiding in there. The less obvious setup with the Versus Sojo arc, most of which we still haven't seen the full payoff for, include the context behind Sojo's trauma, the significance of Char's clan, the soul resonance that occurred between Sojo and Chihiro, and of course the entire series of events that led to Chihiro further understanding how Datanseki bends to the will of the wielder rather than Kunishige himself. A favourite of mine is actually Azami's introduction. Getting his hand fried by the psychic dude seemed pretty funny at the time, but now I view it as subtle foreshadowing for his proper first on-screen battle against Yura, where yet again his hands were targeted first due to them being integral to his power. Now, a panel that also moves me a lot is the one of Azami's lock screen being him, Shiba, and Kunishige in their youth. Learning that Azami is actually an incredibly emotional and reactive person later on in the story hit a lot harder because of simple early moments like this where you get a hint of how much Kunishige meant to him. Seeing how Azami processes that trauma compared to the likes of Shiba also just makes these characters seem so incredibly human, but I'll explore that point further in a second. Everything I've talked about above stems from things that we get within the first 18 chapters of the manga, and yet nothing in that arc feels convoluted or rushed. If anything, that arc appears a lot shallower than the others at face value, which is exactly why it hits crazy hard on a reread. Seriously, try it. Let's not get it twisted though. Kagurabachi's first arc aging like fine wine does not mean it was lackluster on a first read-through. If anything, it's the exact opposite, because the primary purpose of this arc, just like any opening arc, was to introduce the readers to the newly found fictional world of Kagurabachi and get them invested. I sometimes think picking up a new manga can feel like that one meme of the dude mining through dirt until he reaches a mound of diamond. Patience and commitment is sometimes crucial for enjoying stories, and that's fine, but I also don't think that's the case for Kagurabachi. Chapter 1 showcases a perfect balance of action, art, and story to get you immediately onto the next one with the flashback of Chihiro and his dad, the goldfish, the day the Hishaku came, and then the cut to the present time as an 18-year-old Chihiro cuts down a whole room of Yakuza with the N10. If you saw the kind of artwork and paneling Hokuzono was pulling off in Chapter 1 and didn't immediately crave more, then I don't really know what to tell you, because like, what an insane way to debut your first manga. There's just no need for a slow build-up of the main character discovering their powers or building from the ground up, or for the main character to struggle with the issue of maybe having to kill people or hurt people. Chihiro Rokuhira may not be the strongest yet, but even in Chapter 1 he's already lying in the top 10% of all sorcerers, while still having a long ways to go. All of the parts then immediately start moving forward, with the introduction of Char, and then the awesome fight between Chihiro and the bounty hunters, which ultimately leads to N10 vs Cloud Gouger Round 1. A fight like that within the first 10 chapters of the manga while not feeling rushed at all is a huge part of the reason that this series was just so damn easy to get hooked on. Not one single chapter feels lackluster. Plus, Hokuzono made some pretty ambitious and ballsy moves for an author that was barely past the first 10 chapters of their manga. Sojo pulling off that unreal upset against the ACG squad right as they got the upper hand, leading to most of them dying and 2 of them acquiring life-changing trauma, was a stupidly brave yet effective way of showing us how scary the enchanted blades really are, and that this won't be the kind of story where side characters get an abundance of mercy. Furthermore, the final 12-second fight between Sojo and Chihiro to end the arc and finish Sojo for good became so iconic, and for good reason too, because it's such an inventive way to portray a sense of speed and power in a ultimately stationary manga. Oh, and have I mentioned the art and paneling yet? The stupidly dynamic perspective shifts, the unreal aura of characters we barely even know, the full face panels of raw emotion where words become meaningless. Yeah, the art is reason enough to keep turning the page. In my opinion though, the absolute greatest strength of this whole arc when it comes to hooking readers is just how crazy fast Hokuzono can get you to fall in love with the characters. This panel of Sojo, the wielder of Kurugumo, genuinely crapping his pants at the thought of fighting Azami and Shiba as they nonchalantly issue commands from atop a building is exactly the moment I decided this series was going to be the one for me. Deny it all you want, but hype moments and aura is a hugely important factor in a battle shonen, and Hokuzono understands that to a T. Even so though, we still barely know Shiba, we still barely know Azami, we still barely know Char, so why? Why are they so enjoyable to see interact with each other in such a short time? Well, the answer is exactly as I said earlier when I spoke about Azami. Hokuzono is just so good at making his characters feel really human. The way Shiba talks to 15-year-old Chihiro in chapter 1 is a good example of this. He's loud and expressive and says dumb things like, "Here's something you haven't heard, I talk too much." He feels like a goofy uncle, yet there's nothing about it that feels too forced. Similarly, Char is a really fun character to see interact with the rest of the cast, and I think she is definitely the best example of what I'm trying to say here. I often find that young children in shonen manga are just unrealistically mature for their age, even though they are put in unnatural circumstances that are often traumatic in nature, just as Char was. They still act as if their brain is fully developed. But Char doesn't. She is actually just a child. A strangely charismatic and confident child, but a child all the same. Her dialogue is completely nonsensical, and she has these fun little quirks, like when she asks, Hinao or Chihiro if they want to swap while they're giving her a piggyback. Some other cool examples are when she tries on Hinao's jumper, which was just way too big for her, so she starts hyperactively swinging the sleeves around. Also when she orders Chihiro around like an Uber driver while getting food, and when she goes, "Oh dear," to Hinao, and when she... Even just the way Chihiro interacts with Char in the way a parent or a teacher would because of his experience looking after his dad and the way that he takes after his mum is an amazingly, awesome and natural feeling interaction that you can't help but smile at. I say this is the arc's biggest strength because it gets you invested in the cast early on, but I also think it's something that this arc specifically does the best. I'm not saying this aspect is lost completely because Iori and Samura's flashback absolutely nails this, but as the stakes in the story inevitably rise, the opportunities for wholesome human moments fall. That's why I really hope we slow down and catch up with some of the characters we haven't seen in a while after the flashback is done. I definitely think I've yapped for long enough about this arc though, so I'm going to hand the mic over to Daffy for a review of Kagurabachi's second arc, the Rakuzaichi Auction.
Yo! Yes, everybody, it's your boy, Bob Marley, and yes, we are here to talk about some Kagurabachi, ladies and gentlemen. And you did it really correct. Your favorite European one, your boy, to come and give my thoughts on the Rakuzaichi Arc, and I had to pull through, chat. Y'all know I'm here. I'm active. I didn't abandon y'all. I mean, I kind of did because Shueisha was on my ass like some hemorrhoids, and it was bad. It was not fun, not great. As far as the Rakuzaichi arc goes in the general Kagurabachi space, the arc is revered for a reason. There's a ton going for the arc, and I think that Hokuzono really nailed it as far as getting us attached to Hakuri quickly. I feel like if Hakuri wasn't as revered as he was in the fandom as he is now, he could have very easily been a very annoying, grating character, especially if his gag of being obsessed with Chihiro was taken too far. But I feel like Hokuzono kind of knew where to stop with that boundary. It's like, okay, yes, but this is who he is obsessed with and who he wants to be, who he wants to aim for, but I feel like he did it in a way that wasn't exactly exasperating for the audience. I'm always a sucker for the trope of seeing our hero's deeds through the eyes of the common man. So when we have Hakuri in the cafe kind of sipping his noodles in a depressed state, and he sees Chihiro fighting Sojo outside, and he's inspired. And I like that a lot. It actually gets us attached to him fairly quickly. And then as we go through the arc, we see all of these trials and tribulations that Hakuri has been through and all the abuse that he has suffered at the hands of not just his brother Saoya, but as well as the other members of his family, and just the neglect that his father showed him as well. Hakuri's backstory with the Ice Woman is also just tragic as well. Very easily there could have been an outcome of, oh, where she got out or she managed to get away, but that's not the message that she wanted to tell Hakuri. That it's as dark as it is, I do feel that served its purpose as well. For some people, they just don't have any hope. For some people, that they just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's tragic and it's unfortunate. By the way, we're not getting a trailer. Allons is coping and other people are coping. We're not getting a trailer. I'm assuming it's a key visual. If we get a trailer by the time I'm recording this tomorrow, I don't have a watch. If we get a trailer by the time I'm recording this, I will. We're gonna do a waifu tier list. We're gonna do a waifu tier list of Kagurabachi with all the men. That's what y'all gonna get. That's what y'all gonna get from me. There you go. I gotta stop making these bets with people, man, because that's what I did with One Piece, and look what happened there. But as far as Chihiro goes within the Rakuzaichi arc, he feels like he's kind of along for the ride with us, and the arc isn't exactly his arc, which is fine, but there's still a lot of stuff that revolves around him, which is good. You have Yuta showing up, and you have Chihiro showing more of his vulnerable side, right? Him screaming out, "Why did you kill my father?" That was obviously a very poignant moment for a lot of people. Having the presumable final boss, obviously we know Yuta is not the final boss at this point, but having Yuta show up randomly with this group of guys and him saying, "Yeah, I killed your dad, what are you gonna do about it, pussy?" That's cool. That's cool. It's interesting. But then you also have his fantastic entrance into the Rakuzaichi raid with him using Kuragumo or Cloud Gouger as well. That spread with all that negative space. Ooh, we are Oramaxing Kagurabachi all day, nonstop. Yes. Hiyuki showing up in the arc is she was a nice addition as well. I wish she had some more to do. I do wish that Hiyuki had some more to do. Her conversation with Chihiro, I did like it. I do like the alliance that Hiyuki and Chihiro come up with. I'm hoping to see more of her in the manga as well. Part of why I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the final battle as well is it choreography wise is just kind of weak. Like,
do you know what, Daffy? I love you and I respect your opinion. Yeah. Seriously though, what the fuck are we talking about, dude? Look at this shit. Weak choreography. Bro's just trying to rage bait me. I know he's just trying to rage bait me, man.
Chihiro using Akka momentarily is fine, but I feel like there could have been more, especially with Flamebone. I feel like we still don't really have a firm grasp on Flamebone and its abilities, exactly what they do, because it seems kind of basic compared to all of the other like enchanted blades, hacks, and everything else that we have. Having Hikari rise up, and while he's not the best fighter, he hasn't gone through some sort of training arc like, oh, well, Hikari was gone for 2 weeks and now he's fighting like Leon Kennedy, just like punching people in the necks and drop kicking them in the chest all of a sudden. Hikari is still, he's not a fighter, but he's getting better. He's improving with his abilities. And even though he does have their ancestors' mask, that doesn't mean that he's automatically the strongest member of the Sazanami family. And I do like that. Something else also that I do really like with this arc is the fact that we have the lesson that Chihiro learned from Sojo, with the lesson being that, okay, well, these blades, they're not just mementos or positive memories of my father. Like, these are weapons meant to kill people. And you have the lesson with Kiora, where you have these individuals who do not have any sort of emotional attachment or care to these weapons or these mementos that your family has. They will try to sell them off to the highest bidder. And it is damn near impossible for you to contain that yourself. You need help. So it's twofold. And you have this resolved at the end of the arc when you have Chihiro accepting the help of the Kamunabi and saying, hey, I need your help sealing this. Like, please help me. I cannot do it on my own. Because beforehand in the first arc, he would have tried to do it by himself. These are my father's blades. This is all me. That's not the lesson that was learned here. I obviously love Chihiro sticking up for Hikari as well, saying he saved my life, you know, giving Hikari some more hope. And even though he gets the shit kicked out of him by Saoya, he still manages to stick up for himself and be brave in the face of adversity. So obviously Hikari's a fan favorite for a reason. This arc has tons of good stuff back to back to back to back. As far as the anime goes, I can't imagine that it'll be any longer than maybe 7 to 8 episodes for the Rakuzaichi. This is a fairly short arc, but it's packed with a lot of stuff. I'm also a huge fan of the Naruto references with Kiora versus Chihiro and Hikari. Obviously, I mean, Hokuzono's my age. He grew up with Naruto, and having the inspiration from the Zabuza fight with early part 1 Naruto, and you have the fake out going, I love it. There's so much good stuff in this arc, man, overall. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. I'm plugging this shit like it's the end of my video. But let everybody know down in the comments below what you guys think is Kagurabachi's best arc. Personally, I like the Rakuzaichi arc. I like the Rakuzaichi arc. I must confess, though, that Sword Bear assassination arc... Like what I don't know, man. It's really good. I'm not a fan of the Kamunabi raid, but the Sword Bear assassination arc and the Samura backstory, oh yeah, that's good. That's some gourmet shit. Woo! Hokuzono was cooking. Now, generally, I do think that Sojo is more of an entertaining antagonist for an arc compared to Kiora, but Kiora does strike me. I think that Kiora does have a everlasting impression on the cast of Kagurabachi. When you look at Kyora's death specifically, and you look at his life and everything that he's done, he does try to face the fact that, hey, I was probably a terrible father to my children. I might have been living my life the wrong way, especially when he's getting consumed by the Shinichi, and he says, no, this has to go on. I'm making this sale. He held onto his guns up until his death. And it's interesting if you want to think about a possible alternative life or scenario where he was a loving father to his children and he was a loving husband to his wife that he imagines at that table, but as we see, he shattered that dream by his own hand, where you see that visual of the gavel striking the glass. But I do like Kiora. I do think that Kiora is interesting enough. But anyway, it's Big Boy Daffy, guys. I'm out of here. Bye-bye. Sub to me.
Look, I can't be making like an hour-long Kagurabachi video and only be in it for 10 minutes. So between each person's review, I'm going to be giving a very, very brief rundown of my thoughts on the arc, because Rakuzaichi especially is really important to my experience with Kagurabachi, because it is literally the Hakuri Ice Lady chapter. I love that we just call her Ice Lady. That got me to start reading Bachi weekly. I read the Sojo Arc once it concluded as a batch, and then I kind of read the first few chapters of Rakuzaichi and decided, for no real reason, to just let it build up a bit, right? Eventually, when that chapter came out with Hakuri, that was the moment when I read up to it and I was like, ah, okay. So I think now I'm gonna have to read weekly, and I'm so glad I did, because going through SBA, which we'll talk about in a second, was an amazing experience, to say the least. For me, Rakuzaichi, I think Hakuri was the highlight. I'm not gonna lie. I love the Sazanami stuff. I love the sorcery. ISO, very simple. Strong shockwave. Really cool. I love the Shiba gimmick of him just appearing places, right? So when he appears at Kyora's desk, when he appears at the door, Hokuzono clocked on that that's a cool thing he can do and ran with it for the rest of the story. Hiyuki, amazing character, great setup. Only downside of her is the fact that she's a bit of a mic guy, in that she's so strong, but kind of unexpectedly and unnaturally strong that he has to sideline her a bit. At least that's what it feels like. If she was part of the future arcs, then I feel like they would have turned out very differently. So I'm looking forward to see what we do with her in the future, because that ability is dope. I'm so curious about the lore behind it, and also just seeing the way it functions, almost like a partially manifested Susanoo, is very interesting. And I really am looking forward to seeing more, especially with her mindset decisions when it comes to the future of, you know, the Kamunabi, and the person who gave her orders turns out to not be such a good guy. Kiora, obviously, insanely good villain. It's beautiful, very self-contained again, and yet overall still ties into the story, because we see him in the flashback. Only a little bit, but he's there. And also, I think this is where Hokuzono really started to lean into his newer art style, like towards the end. I don't know, I feel like he finds his own style within the Rakuzaichi and then sticks with it throughout SBA and onwards. Yeah, I'll stop yapping about Rakuzaichi there though, and I will let Mike up take you through the Swordbearer Assassination Arc.
Hey guys, Mike here, and I'll be talking about the Swordbearer Assassination Arc, or at least the beginning of it, even though I wanted to do the Kamunabi raid arc, but it's fine. Now, the arc begins right after Chihiro's trial with the Kamunabi, where it was interrupted by the Ishaku attacking Aruha's safe haven. Chihiro joins the Kamunabi for the moment, but they're still on pretty thin ice since he still wants to take the enchanted blades for himself at the end of this, though for now, the alliance still stands. Mainly because Hakuri with Storehouse has the ability to bring the blades back to the wielders through the registration system. Though with the amount of damage he did to himself last arc, he still needs to heal. So their main focus for now is getting Aruha to another secured location, with the place of choice being the guarded ground of another sword bearer, Samura. But before they can get there, we get the introduction of the first antagonist in this arc, Hirohiko.
Who?
He's introduced alongside another Ishaku member as the ones hunting down Aruha, currently with his first big scene being him posing up dead bodies of Aruha's bodyguards right after he killed them. Just to rage bait him, nothing else really, just that. These kinds of mental tactics is something you're going to see a lot from Hirohiko, especially when it comes to his relationship with Chihiro. Now this is where the first real fight of the arc begins, with Chihiro fighting Hirohiko and all the sorcerers the Ishaku have hired for this mission, with it ending when Chihiro takes Hirohiko right off the train, splitting apart from the group, which will lead to many consequences later on. Hakuri and Aruha go on to meet up with Misumi, and I still think to this day that they're the best special squad in Kagurabachi because they actually get shit done and aren't just hype tools or ways to show the Kamunabi's incompetence. Using a ritual circle, they teleport to the temple that Samura has been kept in for his safety. And if you thought Oruha had an introduction, well, get ready for a real one. Always loved how he initially thought Hakuri was Chihiro. The Ishaku begin their second raid on an enchanted blade bearer's safe house, but this time they go all out with the forces, bringing in wave after wave of hired sorcerer and hitman. We also get to meet the guards of this temple, besides the Masumi, with it being the monk force. Name not official. Then we get Samura's first fight, and the week this dropped was something special. Like Aruha's intro with him chopping up a few sorcerers was alright, but he missed one thing: presentation.
Okay, I was not planning on interrupting anyone again after doing it to Daffy, but what do we mean by alright, bro? Like, listen, all the Samura glaze that's gonna come after this is valid. Samura's the GOAT. But are we looking at this page of Uruha launching his big-ass hat at the guy in front, and then jumping over his head and slicing through the hat as well as the guy's face? We're looking at this, and we're going, it's alright. But Samura does the same thing with a fucking cigarette, and suddenly it's peak fiction. Now, hey, they're both GOATs. All right, chill on my guy.
Because the style with which Samura was taking these guys out was unheard of up until this point. And when they popped the Datsenseki thinking it could do shit, only for him to give them that Kashimo treatment and the final page at the end, after that pure display of skill, we switch over to Chihiro's fight against Hirohiko, where we get more of a breakdown of who he is. We find out that he is 18 just like Chihiro, and was killing people since he was 3. Gonna be honest, to this day I still don't know how exactly he was able to do that shit. Like, he killed a grown-ass man with what looks like his teeth. Gotta be a top 5 toddler in the series in terms of strength. The fight starts with Hirohiko using Datsenseki boosted sorcerers to distract Chihiro, while he finds the perfect spot he can use for what he believes Chihiro's weaknesses against him. Kind of crazy just how good Hirohiko was with his sorcery, like being able to use the paper from where he was to fuck up Chihiro's line of sight and create butterflies to see what was going on, while directing sorcerers where to go. Now, Hirohiko versus Chihiro is the second main highlight of this arc, because this entire fight gives us an understanding of who Hirohiko is and how he'll grow throughout the story. Also, this is still one of the best double spreads in the entire series. You can feel the Kishimoto influence seeking in here. But going back over to Samura's group, we see what Yura has been up to, and he's deadass just been fucking around at a playground. We also get Allons-Y's favorite panel in the entire series here. This single panel is what keeps the Shiba agenda alive, I swear. We then get Hatshaku's entrance into the fight, where he pulls up with the most sauce yet. I don't care what anyone says, he has the most style in the Ishaku. He's the only character who can wear a Redditor hat and actually pull that shit off without looking like he shouldn't be trusted with children. Not to mention, he is really smart, using every underhanded tactic he can to get some sort of advantage against Samura and trip him up, almost actually killing him until the Masumi pull up. And honestly, Hatshaku does have the most sauce, but everyone had insane pull-up games this arc. I remember how suspenseful this moment was when the arc was first coming out, because we had Hakuri, 2 sword bearers, and a special force squad fighting together, and it felt like we were just waiting for someone to die. But of course, before that could happen, Hakuri locked in again, and that means he gave himself even worse brain damage, though we did manage to get the Tobimune to Samura. And you get the feeling of, wow, everything is going almost too good. A top 5 moment in Kagurabachi for me is when anyone sees this particular panel of Hirohiko saying that Samura and Yura had met. Because when he says it, at first you're just like, wow, that's odd. Then you kind of start reading again, but then you slowly let it sink in. And by the end of the chapter, when Hirohiko grabs the Kumiri and you realize what just happened, it's just, fuck, we are screwed. Now, taking a break from retelling, I need to take this moment to drop some slander, because I have seen very few moments where the villain will nerf themselves in a fight, and that shit doesn't backfire at all. Uruha, you're supposed to be a prodigy. Like, everyone and their mom in the story loves to glaze him. But the thing about Uruha is he is garbage when it matters. 3 fucking years letting himself soak in hot springs instead of swinging a blade a single time. Like, if he did 10 push-ups before he fought Samura, we would have not been in this situation right now. But no, instead we had to deal with the first villain who knows how to handle a nuke properly. When Samura got this thing, you could tell the difference of power compared to the others we'd seen, and then what he did to Chihiro? posterized my goat. But of course, the arc ends with Chihiro waking up on the hospital bed at the Kamunabi HQ, and we get a ton of setup for what's going to be happening next. Chihiro joining the Misumi, more Hishaku on the move, Samura's pact with Yura, and Hirohiko now being a blade wielder was all great setup for the next portion of the story, which I sadly will not get to cover. I'm sorry, but my time has ended now, but what an arc to cover. Looking back on it as a whole, it really was the arc that set up everything for the rest of part 1 to cover. The Sword Saint's sin, Samura's guilt, Chihiro becoming more of his own person, just a perfect build-up that was giving us a taste of all these new characters. Though, that'll be for the next person to cover. So long, and check out my own stuff after you finish this video.
Okay, I'm here again giving my thoughts on the SBA arc, which is the pivotal moment of Kagurabachi for me. Like I said in the intro, this exact page that I'm going to show you here is the moment that it went from, oh, this series is really damn good and these characters are cool, to, oh, is this, is this Attack on Titan like level stuff? Okay, fine, sure, yeah, just what a unique and inventive way to reveal a traitor. It's not as simple as, oh, he's a bad guy. No, it's so much deeper than that. And even within the arc, you kind of get little hints that what Samura is doing isn't actually the full picture. He has a grander plan, which I really like seeing that kind of hinted at throughout, right? So even when he's doing bad things, it doesn't seem like he's a terrible person. Another amazing thing I want to point out in this arc as well is the introduction of EI White Purity style, which I think is probably the coolest actual sorcery mechanic of Kagurabachi so far, and I really hope it becomes an iconic anime manga move, because the way Hokuzono draws it and the unconventional method of using a sword that way, having 3 masters in the world with Chihiro and Hirohiko kind of being able to use it, I love that. It's so cool. And then of course the Hirohiko-Chihiro conflict and their dynamic being explored is so good, with some of the best like art and aura moments for Chihiro as well. So yeah, SBA, peak. Now for Calcan to break down the Hirohiko arc of Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel.
Yeah, Calcan hijacking the video, that's right. It's a good day, because I get to talk about Kagurabachi's Kyoto arc, or it's also often referred to as the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel arc, whatever one you want to call it. That's what we're talking about. We start the arc fresh off of a major loss, which is Chihiro's first major loss in the whole series, really, so the stakes are really high for this one. We get the introduction of Iori, which is, of course, absolutely wonderful. She is a gem, and I love what she adds to the story of Kagurabachi in a whole. She's also just really interesting in concept as well. The whole, so this really strong guy defeated us last arc, killed his peer, it was a whole thing, we're trying to stop him. By the way, he has a daughter and she doesn't remember him. The drama of it all. I love it. Seeing the weird things going on in Japan, like the rise in crime and especially Owl from the perspective of normal people or like students, is really cool, because it reminds us that more exists outside of these crazy situations that we usually see Chihiro in. With everyone being unable to use their enchanted blades, it really allows us to get some grounded action. Of course, Hokuzono finds a way to make it super cool, even though it's on a drastically smaller scale than what we're usually used to. Cars are flipping, we're slicing buses completely in half. Sumi hits an Akira slide and Chihiro jumps over it. Like, what the heck? That's so cool. And this is all framed as a learning moment for Chihiro too, which is really good character stuff, I think, because he's insecure about his skills following their loss in the last arc, especially in association with how injured Hakuri is after all of that. I think it's really great to see him want to get better for somebody else. Then we actually get to the hotel where the steam really starts building up here. Chihiro and Iori have a really good dynamic going on. Chihiro advocates for Iori to learn her past with Samura, giving her the chance to choose if she wants to keep her memories or not because of how much he values his memory of his own father. They also have a really good conversation about how similar their circumstances are, with both of their dads being heroes of the Seitei War, but also with how different they live at the same point, because Chihiro gets up to his usual Chihiro things, his whole mission, and Iori lives as a normal student. Both of those conversations are really great. We are shown to one of the world's greatest gifts, my good friend Hirohiko.
Who?
In this arc is sporting a cutesy little bun in his hair. He stabbed the dude with a hairpin and then put it in his hair, and that just oozes personality. That's my goat right there. Love it so much. Things escalate very quickly with Hirohiko being violent in this non-violence tolerant hotel. People are sent after Chihiro, which leads to the glorious peephole shot. And then in the same chapter, Chihiro and Hirohiko reunite after, granted, not that long of a time. Still, it's an awesome page. It looks so sick. Their whole scuffle is really freaking cool because the dynamic that they have is super fun to read, and the art is... it's gorgeous. We learn a little bit more about Hirohiko as well, which I think is really interesting. The memory seal fully breaking and Iori starts throwing down. Whoo! Goes so hard. Then we get into flashback territory, which this flashback with Samura and Iori is absolutely beautiful. And I actually actively cried multiple times while I was writing my notes for this. Because I could not stop crying while I was reading this flashback. It was bad. That's besides the point. Well, I guess it's really not, because that shows how good it is. So actually, it's not besides the point. Anyways, the stuff with Inori is so good, but it's so sad, like I said. The whole, I don't have to see, she laughs like you. We get the malediction reveal in this flashback too, which is crazy, of course. This answers some of the questions in our mind at this point in the story, which would be, what are the sins of the sword bearers that Samura was talking about? And why is Kunishige so adamant in denying that he is a hero? And even more questions than that as well. Those are just some examples, but this is a really big deal. The whole malediction thing, whoa. So it answers questions, but it also gives us more questions because it's what made the sword master go berserk? What's Yura's true intention with this prophecy that he's delivering? Is the prophecy bullshit? And it's fun to look back on these things in hindsight as well with the context that we have from the Kamunabi headquarters arc. We also get the introduction of the concept of eternal contracts in this flashback, which is another piece of game-changing information for the sake of this story. And of course, the Samura and Iori of it all is really what makes this flashback so good. Her getting bullied because of who her dad is, but trying to hide it so that they can stay together. And then Samura making her live with her aunt anyways. Ah! Ah! The whole, I'm sorry I caused you nothing but pain at the way end makes me feel genuinely off my rocker insane. Oh my gosh. We're back to the present. Woo! Which of course leads to absolute peak, absolute cinema. That is the infamous 2 ending pages of chapter 74. Incredible build up to an incredible moment, truly. After that, the fighting really ramps up. We get the banquet and play reveals, so the Kumiyuri ability reveals, at least 2 of the 3. Super freaking cool. The Suzaku reveal. So good too. Great stuff all around. The whole 1v1v1 is sick. I love Hirohiko's rampage is what I like to call it. I think it's super cool. I don't care that he loses, it's so cool. Because Hirohiko really did put up a really good fight. Especially after he'd already lost to Chihiro once today. He was already very beat up and then Samura pulled up. It was his first time actually getting to use his enchanted blade in battle, and he really did give it his all for the opportunity to fight Chihiro one-on-one. He really gave it his everything, and it wasn't enough, and he's distraught about it, and it's a really interesting place to leave off with him. With an opponent down, there's a little intermission from Kyoto where we cut to headquarters in Tokyo, where Hakuri is finally up and at him. Woo! I remember this reveal was so fun reading it. Azami throws the fuck down. It's so cool.
Sorry, Cal and viewers. I'm interrupting the video and making it all about me again. I'm sorry. But I just gotta point out that while she's on the topic of Azami fighting those bums in chapter 79, oh my days, bro, this is easily the most memorable reaction moment I've had on stream reading a chapter, and I just have to play the clip because it's iconic. Alright, here we go. Going, oh, Azami. Oh, no, wait, that is so what these non-Hishaku guys are. Wait, just pause for a second. Bro, you know sometimes in just anime and manga when you introduce these, new characters and the author just, gasses them up, and then they exist to be one shot by bro, Azami's gonna come in and waste these fools and then 1v1 the Hishaku, bro.
Maybe.
Now watch. Oh, bro, I'm telling you, listen, I'm calling it right now. When I scroll down, they're both dead, bro, okay? Because he broke the chains. He's eyeing up that Hishaku sorcerer, bro. These bums are getting slammed, bro. Yes, brother, that's what I'm talking about, bro. Hell yeah.
You called it, bro.
Hell yeah.
This is where we get the whole executioner reveal for him. As an Azami girly from the get-go, this moment felt really good. Hakuri gets even more traumatized, which is really just par for the course for him at this point, but he is saved by Aruha, who's alive. Let's go. This reveal is so freaking cool. I love it so much. I think it's so effective, so good. And then when we get back to Tokyo, it's followed up by Chihiro figuring out Samura's plan, which includes the fact that Aruha is alive after all. I really like how that writing is done, of showing Aruha being alive and then going back to Kyoto and Chihiro figuring that out for himself. This is where Samura versus Chihiro begins, which, let me just say now, fucking peak fiction. Oh my gosh, so good. We get the reveal that N10 was made to destroy the other enchanted blades here, which is so cool. The build up to this moment is great between Chihiro's desperation to stop Samura and the flashback in the hospital with Shiba and Chihiro talking. Oh my gosh, and then it leads all into the reveal that it's made to destroy the other ones, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is peak, because it is. This fight is so full of emotion because Chihiro and Samura both have their reasons to fight. Samura doesn't want Chihiro, and especially Iori, to be tormented by the past, and he wants them to be able to live their own lives unassociated from all of this. There's an internalized guilt that Samura just can't shake, but Chihiro is fighting to prove that, first off, this is his own problem to deal with because he is Kunishige Rokuhira's son, but second, he's mainly fighting to prove that Samura can have a future and that he doesn't have to throw his life away and that there is another way to do it. My words really can't do it justice. It's just so good. It's so good. The art in all of this is a mix of gorgeous and stunning because it's snowing and it's like, wow, that's beautiful. But also it's cool as hell, which of course it is. It's Kagurabachi, it's Hokazono. Really, it's to be expected, but like, I'm still gonna glaze it. All of these high stakes finally wrap up with Samura both metaphorically and literally opening his eyes. Overwhelmingly peak. Oh, oh my gosh. I'd say easily one of the best moments in the whole series, and I know for a fact there's no way that's a hot take. Like, everyone knows where they were when Samura opened his eyes. The arc concludes with a little talk in between everybody involved in this whole ordeal. Of course, Samura and Iori get to hug it out, and Chihiro gets to watch with a bittersweet smile, which, sorry, that last of that. We transition to headquarters with a double spread of the Seitai War. Hello, what the heck? So peak, really gives us a taste of what we're in for, huh? And we also get to see Akimura Soga, who at this point is still only known to us as the Sword Master or the Sword Saint, depending who you're talking to. And at this point, he stands up for the first time. Scary. Talk about setting a tone. And at the way end here, Chihiro and Samura declare their next move, that they are going to Tokyo to the Kamunabi headquarters.
Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel arc. The best arc in the manga, by far. My favorite, definitely. It's unbelievable. It's just ridiculous. Going weekly through that, you get some hints at lore drops. We get to see what these Datanseki wielding islanders look like. You learn about the malediction, but you learn about it all from a potentially unreliable source of Yura Hishaku, right? That kind of makes everything a bit questionable. So even though you're getting answers, you still have something in your mind going, is that actually the whole story? And obviously, as we're learning now, it's probably not as simple as what it was made out to be. And then of course we have the Samura and Iori stuff. That flashback, what was it, 2-3 chapters? Peak. I don't blame Cal for crying. It's so good. I let out tears on stream when I saw Samura open his eyes at the end. It is just peak. All right, it's really good stuff. Samura is just a stupidly compelling character, and I already know he's going to be, you know, one for the history books. He's going to be iconic. Let's be so for real. And then just the main crux of the arc being the reveal of Kumayuri ability, Chihiro here Hirohiko Round 2, Samura's entrance, and what is just the best paneling, double spreads, and artwork in the series, and some of the best in manga. Like the page of Chihiro through the peephole, amazing. The double spread of Samura pulling up and then doing Tobimune right after Hirohiko and Chihiro do their blades, almost like it's, well, it is a direct reference to, you know, the Sendai Colony three-way domain clash, is maybe the best page in the whole manga. If not that, then it would be one from, what, literally the next chapter, where Samura flies up into the sky in an amazing framed panel and uses his wings to then fly back down. It's just ridiculous. I don't even know, like, I'll just move on. Let's move on. It's the best. It's the best arc. Moving on to Dice and his pretty lengthy review of the Kamunabi Invasion arc and the final arc of part 1.
What's up everyone? As the last arc of Kagurabachi Part 1, Assault on Kamunabi headquarters is just peak fiction. Not a single arc up to this point has been amiss, and this one caps things off with insane developments, great writing, and absolutely amazing art. You know, the usual from Hokuzono. From the introduction of characters like Kiri, Hokuto, and Natsuki, to Yura and then Akamura Soga finally taking center stage, to say that the whole arc is one hell of a wild ride would somehow still be an understatement. Even though Kamunabi HQ starts to get raided in chapter 78, the arc doesn't actually kick off until chapter 87, with a Kamunabi operative in the archives of HQ trying to figure out who exactly are the Hishaku. The fact that absolutely nothing is known about who they are, where they come from, sorceries, relationships, nothing. Only that they have the skills to pull off the murder of Kunishige Rokuhira led them to be seen as phantoms. And here, the Kamunabi find themselves under attack by those very forces. But this time, outside the threat elimination grounds, the Hishaku themselves wait to make their entrance. Just chillin'. Specifically Bingo, Yukisada, Uran, and who some in the online community call Best Jeanist, wait for Yura before they make their move. It's in this moment when Yura shows up and wagers his life on a coin toss just to go to the restroom, which is somehow still one of his coldest, most iconic moments, cause for a second his eyes look just like Akamura's, and says that today the gods are on his side. This whole interaction with the old man really captures the essence of Yura's character, his sense of conviction and how he has no issue putting it all on the line because he's convinced that higher powers are backing him. At the same time, he's still only human. In the bathroom, he admits to being nervous, but tells Yukisada that he doesn't hate it because nervousness precedes victory, and calls him the strongest fighter in the Hishaku. With the opening created by the mole within the force field core, Best Jeanist improvises and teleports the gang inside right before Izaru catches onto the mole and incapacitates him. They're brought face to face with Uruha, Hakuri, and then Kiri, who pulls up to help. As a granddaughter of Mr. EI White Purity style himself and babysitted by both Uruha and Samura as a kid, Kiri is just a breath of fresh air in the middle of this whole thing. She brings a lot of comedy relief and proves to be a fun character all around. Meanwhile, Yura realizes that Samura had brought Uruha back to life, but isn't really tripping and gets straight down to business, pulling a katana out of a book and clashing with the former enchanted blade bearer, who uses his crimson recital sorcery to blitz through Bingo's giant dancing lion head. Kiri shows off her unique sword style and turns one of the Kamunabi traders into a shish kebab along with Bingo's summons. Bingo and Uran also go on to do their thing down the line, with Uran freezing Kamunabi fodder as Bingo chomps down on them to fuel his sorcery. I mean, from here on out, the whole arc is just non-stop action and chaos, and things only get crazier with each chapter, cause Hokuto and Natsuki Misaka then join the mix, each with a banger introduction that essentially puts them on a collision course. Hokuzono shows off his knack for creating fun character dynamics and how their individual motivations play into it. Here he does it with 3 newly introduced characters, all of whom bounce off each other really well with Uruha right at the center. As a legit smoke demon, Hokuto only looks to engage in duels that put his life on the line and allow him to go all out. Hokuto was the one who actually killed Kunishige Rokuhira using his puppet sorcery. At the same time, he invaded Ibuki Misaka's home and defeated him in a duel. Ibuki was no longer the swordsman he used to be at that point, so the duel wasn't satisfying for Hokuto. Natsuki, who looks to avenge his brother and consistently prove himself as a master swordsman after feeling overlooked when he was younger, makes it just in time to save Kiri and Hakuri from Hokuto and strikes him with his lightning menace sorcery. His short backstory is great, because as the younger brother of a former enchanted blade bearer who was killed after losing his will to fight, and with Uruha being chosen over him to wield Kamiyuri, the kind of chip Natsuki has on his shoulder adds some subtlety to his character, and really plays into those character dynamics I just talked about. So when Uruha falls through the roof fighting Yura, Natsuki's reaction is just priceless. The 4 of them go on to have one of the most memorable duels in all of Kagurabachi, featuring one of the coolest spreads in the entire manga. Natsuki, who was also holding back, isn't having it with Hokuto being satisfied against Uruha, and makes it his point to prove that Uruha's been sitting in a hot spring for years while he never lost his edge. And Uruha himself realizes that he's the only one who wasn't prepared in peak form and finally locks in. With the former prodigy's instincts flooding back and Natsuki fully engaged, they both start going all out and force Yura to pull out the ace up his sleeve. In what is probably the second wildest plot twist of this arc, Yura wields the Magatsumi's abilities without even coming in contact with the blade itself, revealing to have charged it up with the spirit energy before handing it over to Kyora, all in preparation for this moment, effectively using Kyora as a guinea pig to see if the eternal contract could be bypassed, and know what exactly it would take. To me, this is when Yura cements himself as a legitimate mastermind, and the kind of villain you can't help but appreciate for what he does for the story. He was already known for taking gambles and being 2 steps ahead, and this is the very pinnacle of that. Meanwhile, right after Kiri successfully escorts Hakuri to store Magatsumi, Kazan is revealed as the insider who got Kunishige killed and had been conspiring with the Hishaku this whole time, talking about establishing order with the enchanted blades or whatever. I mean, Azami shuts him down real quick, like it's nothing. And just like that, he turns around and has the guts to pull up to a Magatsumi amped Yura himself, with nothing but some spare change.
Okay, I've interrupted everyone else, so it's only fair I interrupt Dice as well. I just need to say, this panel is the funniest manga panel of all time, bro. His sorcery is not called coin. There's no way he's called it coin, which means he's just taken a coin out of his pocket, flipped it in the air while looking at the ground, and spontaneously says the word coin. It's like if I just pick up my mouse and just go, mouse. I don't know what was going through Hokuzono's brain, bro. It doesn't make any sense, but it's great. It's go ahead panel.
Determined to avenge his best friend, Azami quickly shows why he's on another level. With Uruha and Natsuki sacrificing themselves to draw out Centipede, Azami is able to position himself in the attack's weak spot. And despite Yura shredding the bones in his hands with Dragonfly, Azami paralyzes him with his coin sorcery, a healing-based sorcery that was passed down his lineage for generations, but he adapted it for combat. And with it, he catches Yura with a nasty hook to the ribcage. The way Feral Azami is illustrated both in the weekly release and the volume 11 redraws is so raw, and the 2-page panel of him and Yura facing off is cold as hell and one of my favorites. Yura starts to command more of the Magatsumi's powers, determined to bring order to the nation, which for the first time lets us know what his wider goal is, as Uruha and Natsuki get a second wind and along with Azami, take him on one more time. With Yukisada revealed to be the barrier vessel interfering with the force field to repel the enchanted blades, he's targeted by Ikuto, who makes an unexpected return with serious PTSD, feeling responsible for the deaths of his comrades against Sojo. But that same PTSD has led him to create this figment of his imagination with a sorcery who he imagines as Kagura, resulting in him now subconsciously circulating his spirit energy constantly, which actually makes him perfectly suited for battle. Bringing Ikuto back this way and pitting him against Yukisada alongside Kiri and Hakuri is just great stuff from Hokuzono, because it speaks to his ability to do a lot with both new and returning characters by putting them in compelling and interesting situations. However, even this buffed version of Ikuto with the help of Kiri and Hakuri is not enough to kill Yukisada with his ridiculous regeneration abilities. Bro got decapitated and wasn't even phased. Their fight is cut short as soon as Ikuto senses the presence of Magatsumi and uses his Iron Sand to shield off Kiri and Hakuri along with himself. Yura then walks in with Azami's arm in his hand, leaving a trail of Magatsumi's flowers, including on the bodies of those in his way. He proceeds to make his way to Akamura to kill him and properly wield Magatsumi once and for all. But their conversation changes everything. Yura only intended to wield Magatsumi because he was convinced that there was no one else fit for the task if the Sword Saint had gone crazy like they say. With Akamura no longer encroaching into Yura's body and revealing that he never lost his mind, but intentionally unleashed the malediction based on his ideals to protect the people of Japan, Yura has a change of heart. He approves of the malediction and admits to getting Kunishige killed, who Akamura reveals is his brother-in-law, because he believes that sealing away the enchanted blades was a mistake that he planned to correct. And with the Magatsumi finally in his hands, Yura offers Akamura a chance to lead with the enchanted blades together. I really can't glaze this moment enough. The plot twist, the dialogue, the implications on the wider narrative, everything about this interaction is just peak and feels like the culmination of everything the Hishaku have worked for up to this point. That is, until Azami shows up like a walking corpse and plays a spoiler. Even after losing his other arm, he's able to buy enough time for Shiba to show up, after Hakuri was able to teleport the core station vessel into the storehouse. As always, Shiba's pull-up is tough, especially how he teleports Yura outside for Chihiro and Samura to deal with. With the man who led the plot to kill his father in front of him, Chihiro is as locked in as ever. But the same cannot be said about Samura, who finds himself distracted by innocent bystanders in danger. Even though Shiba has that covered, Yura is still able to exploit that as a weakness of Samura's, and makes the point to him that you can't perform great feats without making sacrifices. Chihiro pulls up behind Yura and uses Nishiki to resist and dash through Centipede, stabbing him and unleashing a combination of Samura's Suzaku stacked with his own via Aka to sever Yura's connection to Magatsumi. In his most vulnerable moment, Yura screams at Chihiro that it was Kunishige who made the world the way it is, not the Hishaku. Yura and his wife were merely nobodies who needed a hero. His wife was killed after the so-called heroes abandoned them and were no longer around to protect nobodies like them. After seeing his memories, Akamura assures Yura that he'll be that hero, and by allowing Magatsumi to completely devour his body, Yura becomes possessed by the Sword Saint himself. Enter Akamura Soga. This is why I'm saying that this entire arc is just ridiculous, because each reveal only enriches the story and continues to set the stakes even higher, while building on and naturally progressing this through line of what it is that Yura and the Hishaku fought for. It doesn't take long for Akamura to make his presence felt. He acknowledges that his existence is incompatible with society's mainstream ethics, but insists that he had to go to a place where no one else would and wipe out the enemy. He felt that he fulfilled his role and that was enough, but as he recalls Yura's final words, he realizes that it wasn't. He unsheaths Magatsumi, causing the buildings around him to bleed black, and asks why Kunishige sealed away the enchanted blades. It only takes him seeing Enten in Chihiro's hand for him to know the answer to that question. Before Samura can react, Akamura cuts the whole panel in half and speed blitzes Chihiro, holding Magatsumi to his neck. He treats him with familiarity as they chat for a bit. Akamura reveals to him that he's his uncle, his mom's younger brother. He also wanted to hear from Chihiro himself why it was that his father sealed away the blades. Upon learning that Enten was forged to destroy the enchanted blades, Akamura seems to take it personal, and vows to eradicate evil and protect the vulnerable, and will kill anyone who gets in his way. No exceptions. Samura comes back just in time with Suzaku, yet still aware that Akamura can take his life. Chihiro is given a chance to back down, but as he says, he has his own mission to fulfill. It's revealed that Magatsumi is the enchanted blade crafted with the purpose to kill enemies, has more than 3 abilities, and drains life around it, giving it to its wielder, allowing it to command a darker and stronger power. With Akamura's true realm, simply unsheathing it allows it to passively drain the life of everything within its radius. Even Samura's Suzaku can barely hold it off. At one point, Samura engulfs Akamura within a domain of Suzaku's flames. And sure, it's still no match for Akamura, but I can't even put into words how hard the art goes in this sequence. Like, Hokuzono was just flexing every time he drew Akamura and Samura going at it. Anyway, Enten, on the other hand, was the blade forged to counter the malediction in Magatsumi. After opening the doorway to its true realm, Chihiro is able to use Nishiki to block Magatsumi's disruption of all life and ignore Spider, taking on Akamura before he can kill off Samura. With Aka, Chihiro discovers how the Magatsumi channels black energy into infinite forms, and with his Rokuhira eyes, he's able to perceive the blade's pathway and react to Akamura's attacks. It's here when Akamura becomes aware that Chihiro and the Enten are a legitimate threat, and though he wanted to avoid killing his nephew at first, he then recognizes that Chihiro is a samurai like him. Akamura stops playing games and lands a decisive blow on Chihiro, breaks the Enten, and then pierces his heart. He's convinced that Kunishige's rusty old ideas and the post-war years dulled his skill and made him lose his way, with Chihiro's fleeting destiny and the Enten being the result, the evidence that Kunishige lost his mastery. Akamura tells Samura that he lost, betting on a dud, and goes on to use B to blast a massive hole into Kamunabi HQ, claiming he'll purge the Kamunabi, place it under his control, and lead Japan with the malediction. Aware that Akamura has returned, Shiba rescues Hakuri and intends to fall back and regroup, evacuating anyone who stands a chance at landing a blow against him in the future. Chihiro thinks of his father as he bleeds out, with Enten slowly disintegrating in his hand. But Samura doesn't let that happen. He's convinced that Chihiro wasn't a dud, that he's the light that will continue to shine on many. This time, it is Samura who burns his own life force to wield the dark power, preventing Enten from turning to dust and healing himself for one last duel against Akamura as he undoes the malediction with his black flames, saving all who were affected. They share a short conversation in a mental scape, kinda like we see between Chihiro and Sojo. To Akamura, Chihiro is inadequate in every way. But Samura understands what Chihiro has been through, that until just 3 years ago, Chihiro was forging swords. He says that in every way, Chihiro is just getting started. With their powers basically canceling each other out, they meet at the apex of swordplay. This sight is burned into Chihiro's Rokuhira eyes, giving him the blueprint to destroy the Magatsumi and slay Akamura Soga. When they first met, Samura and Akamura weren't all that different, and felt a sense of mutual understanding. The hands of both would shake when they killed their enemies. Akamura even used to believe that beyond the pile of corpses, there was a peaceful world. But the war changed him. Instead of just waiting for Samura's body to turn to ash, Akamura opts to respect him as a fellow swords fighter who's fully committed, and they charge at each other one last time. Ultimately, it is Akamura who emerges victorious, of course, bisecting Samura. Samura fades into thin air and uses one of Crow's feathers to deliver Tobimune to Yori as Shiba teleports away with Chihiro. Samura goes out like a goat. His bet on the future and how he thinks of Yori as he fades away is genuinely heavy and extremely well written when you look at his entire character arc. 4 days later, Akamura has already revealed himself to the public, and is said to have issued a declaration of war as we see him looking over the city from the skies. Meanwhile, Chihiro regroups with the Masumi and Yori, who've been keeping a low profile. He blames himself for losing, but says that there's still a chance to bring back Samura using the Dark Power, a secret realm of the enchanted blades that even Kunishige couldn't fathom. Only Magatsumi commands that power constantly, but the other enchanted blades always had that potential. Chihiro believes that he can destroy Tobimune so Samura can return using the black flames he went out with. But first, Chihiro will need to forge a new enchanted blade using what remains of Enten and the other piece of Cloud Gouger. With the perspectives of Sojo, Hiyuki, Kyora, Yura, and Akamura on his mind, he reflects on what kind of blade he should make now that he's set on seeing the world through his own eyes. He doesn't just look to follow in his father's footsteps, he looks to surpass him, and with Chihiro forging his new enchanted blade, the curtain closes on Kagurabachi Part 1. Honestly, I don't think things could have ended on a higher note than this. This entire arc is just an experience. Chapter after chapter, things only get better and better. And just when you think Hokazono can't top it, he goes and does it again. I'll wrap things up by saying that this arc captures everything I love about Kagurabachi. The fights, the reveals, the art, the character writing, and the clash of ideals relating to absolute power and the moral obligation it entails. It's all just sublime, and while Assault on Kamunabi Headquarters is genuinely one of my favorite arcs in all of shonen. But I've yapped more than enough. Big thanks to Allons for having me on. Peace.
The Kamunabi invasion arc is a really weird one for me because it has some of the absolute highest highs of the whole series and is mostly an incredible arc all round, but it's also one of those arcs that I have some tiny little complaints about, or more so just like criticisms or issues I personally have, right? I'll go through the positives first. Everything to do with Azami is probably my favorite part of the series, or top 3. His sorcery reveal is dope, Coin is a hilarious and iconic panel at this point, and the fact that we have this guy very emotional and very reactive, like I said in the beginning, you know, immediately you can see when Kazen reveals himself as the traitor and says it was even worth Kunishige's life, you can tell from that panel that Azami is about to freak out. Like, just from the way he's been drawn in that tiny little panel, you can tell. Next page, fist to the face. It's so good. And then we get to him, you know, doing the whole, I'm gonna go kill their leader, and he throws down with what is basically a hydrogen bomb while being a coughing baby. It's ridiculous. The fact that he managed to do that to person wielding the Magatsumi at Yura's level is just insane. And then he does the Gojo later on, you freaking demon. But then we have really cool stuff. Hokuto, Natsuki, Yura, and Uraha. Love it. Did a reread. Uraha is one of my favorite characters. Hokuto is really cool. I low-key think he's the strongest Hishaku. And then there's obviously, you know, Yuki Sada is just a thing. I don't know, bro. Whatever. That fight, the art, some of the double spreads, ridiculous. Next level stuff. Genuinely, I don't have the words. It's so good. Some great setup there. Very good dynamic and kind of interactions between those characters while fighting as well. I really liked Bingo and Uran. I found those two very interesting, especially their power sets. I wish we got more though. There was moments like that where we cut to them, or we see, you know, the best genist guy, or we see those hair comb sorcerers that pulled up and started talking smack to Uran and Bingo, and that never really went anywhere. Obviously, Ikuto had some great stuff, and he interrupted that with something really dope, but even then, Ikuto had his moment and kind of just dipped, right? I feel like there was a lot of underutilization evolution of these characters, and I do wish we'd slowed it down and focused more on those kind of like little things. Like, I thought this arc was going to be very Hakuri centered, and sure, he did a great job with some great moments, but he wasn't anywhere near as crucial to this arc as I thought he would be. But then, of course, yeah, Yura and Samura and Chihiro, and then kind of Shiba, peak. I don't know what else to say. Akamura Soga actually coming through, no one expected that. And then the fact that he's here to stay with Samura giving up his life, and it's just all good. Dice explained it enough. I love that arc. It's amazing. We are now in the Seitei War arc, which means part 2 has officially begun, and I'm not going to be covering that just yet, but the quality is just as consistent. I really do think Kagurabachi is in it for the long haul, but even part 1 in itself is generational. Let's be for real. The anime is coming April of next year. I can't wait for it to hit another massive boom in popularity. I will still be here making content. I'll obviously have to make a part 2 video similar to this when it gets concluded. But yeah, overall, Kagurabachi, definitely not a meme. Thank God it was in the beginning. It had nothing to do with how coincidentally amazing this series turned out to be, and I will have more Kagurabachi videos coming out in the future. Thank you very much to everyone who hopped on the video. I think it was a great way to showcase the really nice kind of tight-knit community before, you know, the anime causes the whole fandom to blow up and massively increase. Big up the creative community in Kagurabachi. It's a great space to be in right now for the most part. And yeah, let's just hope it stays as good as it is so far, because it's peak. How shall I end the video? Like, subscribe. Enough time has passed, I guess.